so let's jump into the presentation. So I am Rebecca. I'm product marketing manager here at Honeycomb, and I'll pass things over to Martin.
I had to do that just as I grabbed some of my drink. Thanks for that. Yes, I'm Martin Thwaites. I'm one of the developer advocates here at Honeycomb, who focuses on developers and the way that developers interact with observability and stuff like that, which is why I'm massively excited to talk to actual developers who've been working with Honeycomb and development and stuff like that. We're at Coveo, so I'll pass over to Andy first.
Okay. Hi, I'm Andy. I work at Coveo. I'm a principal software developer. I work mainly on the machine learning platform. So I don't do machine learning. I don't know how to do that, but we have people with PhD and master degree who are very good with that. And I make sure that when they produce, the models are distributed across our cloud. They're highly available, and they're the answer in a timely manner. So that's the elevator pitch for me. Mathieu?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Mathieu. I'm Director of Machine Learning at Coveo at the intersection of machine learning, engineering, and applied science, actually. My team is mostly focusing on the NLP capabilities that we have and we're building inside of the Coveo product and platform. I think we have time for a bit of an elevator pitch, or how I would describe Coveo, because for most of you guys, it's probably the first time you've heard that name. So we're a company that was born in Canada, Quebec to be precise. And basically Coveo is two things. The first one is a big enterprise secure unified index with over 100 connectors. So what we do is we pull data in from our customer data application all across their enterprise, and we make it possible to search in that single unified index. On top of that, we're building machine learning capabilities and personalization capabilities. We mostly cater to e-commerce and customer service. And Coveo at any given time is about 10,000 machine learning models in production, just to give an idea of the scale of things we're talking about here.
Awesome. Awesome. Cool. So, well, let's dig right in, shall we? So I suppose the first question is, how did you start using Honeycomb? How did you get involved with Honeycomb? What was the first sort of, oh, let's start looking at this thing? So obviously we're very much towards the DT side, the distributed tracing side. So what was that first kind of entry point for you?
Yeah, I can take that. I was very interested by the idea of distributed tracing and using structured logging instead of raw logs and normal telemetry metrics. And I decided to use Honeycomb as a POC on a competition that we organize. So we develop a coding competition every year. We have a huge platform that needs to deal with all the student that sends their code, and we build it and we need to monitor all these things. So there was a bunch of stuff that we needed to. It was hard to diagnose and everything. So I tried to integrate Honeycomb in it, and once I tried it, I was like, there's no way I'm debugging any distributed application without that kind of tool anymore. So then because I was used to using only logs and metrics to debug my stuff, it didn't work. It was very hard. So when I saw how powerful structured logging can be, tracing, I brought it back into the whole company afterwards.
Awesome. What was it about the tracing versus the logs that was the sort of differentiator? I mean, obviously, I'm assuming that you used to structured logs and distributed traces and spans. They're kind of just logs, and I say that as a provocative statement. But you know, what was that aha moment of distributed tracing is the different thing? Yeah.
Well, first of all, it is getting a better understanding of what's going on. When you have raw logs, you have all these things that are displayed at the same time, whether it's on different thread, different queries. Like, it's really hard to follow up what's going on. When you have structured logging with span, you're able to figure out, okay, this called this and this called these, and then you're able to really like dig into and make some sense. So even if you don't know the system, you get to look at it and understand it right away, even if there is multiple system implicated and not just your team. Something you cannot get out of looking at logs. You're looking at a bunch of text. It's really hard to figure out what's going on. that would
Yeah, I mean,
that's my easy take for that.
we refer to that as causality. So the idea that this thing caused this thing to happen, and that's where you get that nice little waterfall of these things cause these things, cause these things, and that was my aha moment with distributed tracing of, oh, I don't just have to look at one big stream of logs that relate to one request and use timestamps to work out where it was in the application at each time. It's all of a sudden you go, oh, here's a map. Oh, it's not just a list of directions. Like I can actually see it on a map. Oh, all right, okay. So I'm presuming you were doing logging before, were you?
Yeah, no, of course we had logging, a lot of logging actually. A lot of logging. Also, we had metrics, so we could have a global view of what's going on. But like, I mean, you get up to a certain point where if you have a problem to fix, you need like all your logs and then an Excel spreadsheet or some like heavy kung fu with the tools that you have, so you're able to figure out what's going on. And good luck figuring out like global trends and stuff. Like it's really hard with those raw logs. And you wish somebody like logs the right thing as well. It's always like yeah, before, after. I mean, what's the difference between that and printf when you're debugging, right?
Almost the same, right? Yeah. I know we're going to talk about this later, but also like hinting at the fact that, right, to be very proficient with good old logs, I think the level of expertise required, right? You need very in-depth knowledge of your system, like the entirety of the system and all of that, and different types of people with different level of familiarity and comfort are usually investigating and debugging, and so lowering that barrier is a huge difference maker as well.
Yeah, so I mean that's the system understanding thing is something that is one of the side benefits that I don't think everybody gets until they actually get it. That, oh, I understand things now. I have my own stories of the organizations that you go into and say, oh, the startup's running slow, and they go, well, you look into it and say, well, no, this doesn't reuse this item, and they go, it does. It's like, well, I've just put tracing in and it doesn't. And then they dig into it, and we call it the mean time to WTF, which is the amount of time it takes you to go, what the, oh yeah, that's the problem.
That's a great metric, by the way.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it's going on the DORA metrics next year, apparently. Cool. So, I mean, did you feel that this was like a cultural shift? And I hate the term cultural shift, but you really have to think about things very, very differently when you do distributed tracing and stuff like that. So, was that a problem for you? I mean, you say you came at this from a POC perspective. That was the first time that you did it. Was it really a problem for the new applications that were already used to it? Did you have problems there?
I don't even think we have to go to a new application to figure out like that there was an issue. All the advantages that this kind of tool combines, like they're so much valuable. Previously, sometime where there was an issue, through logs you would see some stuff, maybe through global metrics you would see some stuff, but figuring out what was going on was so hard that sometimes you would look at stuff and be like, I don't think it's my problem, so you would bounce it to another team, and then these team would look into it and be like, there's nothing obvious to us, so clearly it's on your side, and you would have this ping pong game going on, which is not productive. It's costing a lot of people hours like to figure this thing and fixing it. While in reality, when you have like structured logging, tracing, and all these kind of things, then you're able to easily pinpoint what's the issue and like, or instrument your code to really like say, okay, this is what's going on, and you're able to answer question in such like a fast way that it's magnitude faster to answer question with these tools than you would have with logging or plain metrics. So I don't have to look for a new application. Like current application, once we drop in that kind of tooling, like got the benefit from day one.
So do you still
I don't know if it answered your question.
Do you still use logging?
We do actually, because when we send traces, we do sampling, we do tail sampling, so we don't keep everything, and sometimes people are able to send us like a request ID where they're like, this specific thing like is an issue. It's a very small subset of issues we had with the request ID, and sometimes it's good to have to have like explicit logs out of them, like really like step by step and all the like the nitty details that you would get. But if you're looking at getting trends, understanding like trends, but really located to something specific that you get from high cardinality that we log within those traces. If you need to really understand the system as a whole, like you won't get that through logging. So sometimes we use log, but what I can say is people used to go at log first to figure out issue. And the more they were using like tools like Honeycomb, and then they would slowly start using it more and more because they get the answer right there faster and with less effort than they would get out of their logs after, like, even if they're good with logs, like they're just like slowly like, oh, I'll go Honeycomb first, just, and then they get it. Oh, okay, so they slowly stop using logs.
It's probably not the best analogy, but what comes to mind is also a bit of the tree versus forest thing. It's like what you get with distributed logging is really this higher level, right, at picture where you get a much better sense of what's going on in the system right now. And then maybe you still need, and why I think, you know, logs are still useful, especially for us that we do sampling, is then sometime, you know, you're going to need to go, once you've identified where the problem is in the system, then sometimes you need to go, you know, really look at the tree itself and kind of pull out all the logs and see that. So that's kind of, I think that's kind of how we've ended up
the tree down
at this point.
Sometimes
it's shot. Yeah, exactly. Right. But that's kind of where we're at right now. And it works pretty well.
Yeah. So do you think there was something that specific that you had to do to convert people, or was it just show them? Was it just it being there and they just naturally went, oh, this is better? And or did you have to actually do something? Did you have to turn the old system off? Because I've done that in the past. It's like, you will use this one because I will turn that one off.
Oh, that's a very my way or the highway way.
Yeah.
But
I'd say
management style.
but I'd say to that, I think it's a pretty aha moment. I think Andy was talking about that before. I think when he came to us, for example, right, and we started having this conversation and he showed us, there wasn't really any doubt, I think, because once you see, once like somebody who's a bit comfortable with that shows you what it looks like, it's I think it's instinctive. If you've been out there for long enough, you know the pain of you know, investigating these very complex systems, and seeing something like that is very much a aha moment where like, wow, okay, now I get it immediately. Like I see how much time this thing can save us.
Yeah.
Well, the example, the most haha moment I get, it's my favorite moment when I show Honeycomb, is like, okay, look at this, and then you do a heat map with the duration in millisecond, and then you use the bubble up. People like guess like, wait, what did you do?
What just happened?
Here? Like, yeah, exactly. No, look, because I have so much data and so much, like all the cardinality that you want, like you can do that with log unless you want to use Excel in like a month of your life, and you can have that with metrics unless you want to spend like monies, a lot of money. So you use Honeycomb, you spend like you send your span with your attributes with all the cardinality that you want. So in our case, we keep all the orgs. So when you click, you drag, you say, look, this organization is having an issue, and I can clearly point out what's going on with them because I have like all this information so it's people like, usually I can see in their eyes, like the eyes open wide and they're like, oh, okay, new game. This is a new game for us. Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I find is that showing people is one of the big problems, because people don't know that there is something better than what they had. So they're quite content, like you say, with log searching. I can search my logs, I can do my free text stuff, I have the system knowledge, but they don't know that there is something else. They don't know that there is something better until they see it. And as humans, we are naturally apprehensive of new things. So we're like, well, I'm too busy doing my work. I'm too busy doing the things that I'm doing to learn this new system. I'm much more comfortable with just using what I have, because I know it works and I don't want to bring in the risk of doing something else. Did you get
all
that?
diehards? Yeah.
Oh yeah, and you're hitting it on the nail, Martin. Like the amount of expertise people have with our logging tools right now, like it's astounding what they're able to do. Like, you know, I think they're twisting it in a way that shouldn't be twisted, but they're making it do what they want, and they're getting the information out of it the way they want it. But I'm like, listen, what you've done, like the amount of, like, you have a lot of, and it's kind of working. Yeah, but look, like I don't need like all the expertise. I take what I take Honeycomb as an example, click and drag, and poof, I have the information right there. Or I add one attribute to a span, and then boom, I'm able to figure this out forever. So and I'm able to figure it out in other system, which I couldn't do before, because you can be good with your logs, but if the other system doesn't instrument the way you doesn't log the way you log in your thing, then it's not exactly going to work. But in Honeycomb or in tools like that, you just you get it right away, and from other system, from other people, you just get information that you wouldn't get normally. So this is
I have some very specific questions about bubble up to come, because that is one of my favorite things. I always quote I think Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, which is kind of how I feel about bubble up sometimes, because people do look at it and go, no, that's just by chance that you found that. Like, no.
Oh, no.
It was a thing. But yeah, we'll get into that. I mean, so do you have anything that you could show us about this? I can obviously show some stuff about distributed tracing, but I'd love to see some stuff from you if you've got some stuff that you can show around some of your tracing stuff.
Yeah, I wish I could show stuff, but we can't really. But we can talk about some awesome situation that we've solved in such an easy way with these tools. I'm sorry, folks. I like showing stuff, but it's NDA stuff, so. So yeah,
we're all very trustworthy. Me and my
no doubt about that.
Yeah, I know. You look trustworthy. It's just that I really can't.
But I mean, what I can do is, when we get into the bubble up stuff, I can show some narrative, and I'll show us some of our the open telemetry demo stuff, so we've got some context for people to show what it is that you were trying to do. But yeah, we can absolutely do that, because a picture tells 1,000 words.
Of course.
Okay.
But since we're talking about bubble up, maybe we can talk about one of the success story we had, and maybe that's gonna be interesting to people around here. And Mathieu, I'm thinking about the situation we had with some of the NLP model that we had that were running very slow. And if I can give some small context, like today we run on Kubernetes, and people are abstracting we're getting a nice abstraction for people, but sometimes this abstraction has a cost. And maybe Mathieu, you want to expand on what happened and how we figured this out.
Yeah, correct. So one of our NLP systems or models was experiencing, slowdowns, or at least we could see through the distribution, right? So typically we're gonna do some nice dashboard with distribution over response time, right? So you want to monitor your P90 or P99 and things like that, right? And we could see that models were not performing as expected, and that's also credit to the amount of data we can log into these things, right? So that wasn't immediately obvious that something was necessarily different in the typical things, right? For example, if we look at version, the version of the models that are running, we couldn't see anything necessarily that could easily explain that. So quickly, just by using the bubble up, right? So typically you'd use the heat map feature, let's say, to see there's a bunch of calls that are returning much slower than expected, right? They're outliers. And using bubble up, right? So what happens with bubble up is you get a breakdown across your dimensionalities of, well, so that group that you've highlighted with your bubble up, right? What is statistically significantly different than, let's say, the baseline, right? Like the rest of the system on average. And so that's very powerful, because immediately you get to see the different dimensionalities where, oh, there's a meaningful difference, right? Like the group that you've selected there is very different in all ways and forms. And so it just happened to be for us that one of the things that was different there was the underlying instance type from the cloud provider, right? So SAWS in our case. And we saw that there was different instance type that this thing was being deployed on, which was not necessarily something that we desired. And so immediately actually seeing this, we could kick off discussions into, well, okay, so the model is not running where it's supposed to be. It's running on a much lower and older gen instances, for example, right? Instead of getting all the latest and greatest improvements for things like, some of our models are deep learning models. So it's PyTorch and things like that. So typically you want to be running on the very latest instances, because there's a couple of powerful optimization that you can tap into for inference, right, to speed up inference and stuff like that. So that was a case where immediately just, using bubble up, we saw the instance type differences and we realized that there was a problem there and we could act on it very, very fast.
Yeah, so I've put up a share there of a basic bubble up. I'm assuming yours wasn't as prominent as that particular one there, but that kind of idea where it's the point and click, isn't it? You're asking the computer to, what's different there? That thing, tell me what's different there. And what's really amazing about computers is they're very good at adding up and doing comparative analysis. They're built for this. We're not, but computers are. And that is the indistinguishable from magic, because you've just gone, can you tell me what's different, please? And it's been able to show you that, oh, this particular property is interesting to you, but it's not told you that it's running the wrong instance type. And that's the interesting part, I think. So it didn't tell you that it's running the wrong instance type. What it did tell you, though, is that this thing is different to the others.
Correct.
And that's the interesting part. It pointed you in the direction. It's not a tool that's going to tell you what's wrong, but it is a tool that's going to say, here's an interesting area for you to look at. And it's kind of like a companion, I see it as. It's this little helper on your shoulder that comes to you and goes, maybe look over there.
Yeah, and that helper is very good at crunching the numbers like this, right? And the way it's presented, I think the power comes through that is immediately having access to that breakdown like this, and like baseline versus selection. It probably doesn't get any better than this, besides like having something that can solve the problem for you, I guess. But
next step.
It's pretty great. And so and so in case of NLP, like the type of NLP services that we deploy, right, there's a bunch of stuff that we'll want to track with this. For example, I don't know, some simple stuff, but still very important, like the language that comes in, right, the input line, the length of the input, right, like how long was the input that was passed to the model. So on and so forth, right? There's plenty of things that are actually important, or that can help you identify potential, performance issues, and just being able to throw everything in there, and knowing that as soon as you see outliers, instabilities, right? And we haven't talked about SLOs and alarms, right? But this, you can automate even, right, that kind of detection, and so you'll be notified when things go south. And then immediately jumping in there and seeing, okay, well, where are the differences in my dimensions, right? Like, what are the things that are not like the others? It's extremely powerful.
Oh, even like who doesn't understand what Mathieu does, I can still look at it and figure out stuff like that, because he adds information, I see it, and I'm able to have a more intelligent discussion than it's slow, fix it. And when you don't have information, the discussion basically looks like that, right? It's like, I don't know why it's slow, but it's not my problem, fix it. No, I'm like, it's slow and it looks like it's heading toward this, so can we have a conversation about this? So.
And with the spans is great, because you also get a breakdown, right? It's very granular in the sense that, like, it's not just the response time for the entire service. Now I can dig in and see, is a specific part of the processing that's being done is problematic here, right? So very quickly you're able to converge on the specific pieces of the service that might be problematic.
So I think a lot of the stuff that we're looking at on that blowout that we're talking about at the bottom, which looks through those attributes, is quite small. One of Honeycomb's key things that we push people to do is think about high cardinality data. So we really push on this idea of, so for the people who don't know, high cardinality is the idea of a particular attribute that can have lots and lots and lots and lots of potential values. Think user ID, order ID, that kind of stuff, which is traditionally excluded when we talk about metrics and that kind of stuff. So did you have anything, any struggles with high cardinality before you started using us? Because that is one of our obviously big things that we push. You did structured logging. Did you use high cardinality things before? Did you stay away from them? And have they been useful since?
Oh yeah, if I can, first of all, like, we tried to use high cardinality, but with time series, which of course happened when the cost people came to us and like, listen, it's not going to work. You need to cut this off. So we had to reduce our cardinality, which came at a great cost for us, because if you look, suppose that the query suggests how we help complete people queries. In one of the region of the world, there's one big client with many small clients. We care about all of them, but because the big client is so big, when you look at this metric, the global metric of how fast we're answering like query suggestion, you're looking at them basically. They're dwarfing everything else, but we care about everyone, so it doesn't work. Like I cannot just look at this and say everything's fine. I just can't. But when you use a tool like yours that provide me with the capacity of adding every client that we have in that organization and then group them by client, by organization ID, this is how we call them. So group them by organization ID, then I'm able to see every client that I have. And if one of them is having an issue, I can spot it right away. Or if I do, as we show the bubble up, click drag, and I see that a specific client is having an issue because they're using a specific configuration that we didn't know was possible or that we didn't want them to use, then we can see it happen right there. So this kind of high cardinality, like it saves us from only using metrics, because metrics is not good enough for this use case. And logs, I mean, come on, I'm not even talking about logs. It's just not gonna work. The other, maybe I'm about to touch.
No,
on
I
that.
just wanted to add something on that, Andy, right? And remember that, you know, at any given point, we're running north of 10,000 models in production, and so like the ability to surface that, right? Like, so we have over 10,000, you know, model IDs out there. So the ability to actually dig into any of them or get the big picture is a must for us. I mean, like you want to have that visibility, because otherwise you're not able to see if things are problematic in a specific model or in a specific organization. Yeah.
Did you find that was useful to be able to then drill into traces from those? You know, being able to say this particular user is a particular problem, and then being able to see what it was that particular model was doing. Was that a benefit to you?
Oh, more than you think. Well, more than
Okay.
I mean, the simple fact that people doing building ML models, their release is really disjointed from their deployment. So they do deploy a model, but the model doesn't get rebuilt right. They do deploy the code to build a model, but this code doesn't deploy the model right away. It's not released right away. We need to wait for that we gather enough data, or that the schedule specified by the client is reached. So it means that they could deploy code, and their code will generate a model only a month from now. So they have 10,000 clients that are not updated at the same time. So then it means that they have multiple versions running concurrently, but not the same one everywhere. So figuring out what's going on when you don't know which model version is there, which engine version is there, and Mathieu can talk about it, how they use that day, but it's hell.
No, I think you've laid it out pretty well, Andy. I mean, you know, for any given specific type of model, we might have a couple of versions in flight. And so every time that's like an automatic, right? If you see that the client has a specific issue or reporting something weird, well, one of the first things usually the team does is, are they running latest? And that's like a 1 second check. I mean, it's extremely easy to just go in the dashboard and see, okay, this client, oh, they're not running latest. You know, we know we fixed that. So, okay, let's trigger, you know, let's do a manual trigger on this client. Let's see to update their logic instead of waiting, because we have orchestration, and these things are retrained like on schedule automatically, but sometimes, right, you want to fix a problem. So you're not going to wait for this to kick in only in a week or two or whatever the schedule is.
This might be a good segue. We have a question in the chat here. They were wondering, what are important features that you use for your day-to-day? Dashboards, discrete columns, triggers, SLOs? Yeah. Andy, do you want to start? I can complement that.
I thought that yes was the answer. Like, I'm satisfied with that.
all of them, yes. Yeah, exactly. No, pretty much all of that stuff, though, to be honest. But
yeah,
do you want to...
day to day, I mean, bubble up and just like asking question, like what's going on, like, oh, I see, like, oh, how's query suggest answering, is it fast enough? Then you look like, oh, there's something that doesn't look right here. So then you start digging. Okay, is it per region? Okay, oh yeah, it's only in one region. All right, fine. Oh, there's an interesting pattern there. And then you start using bubble up. Okay, it happens only with this kind of, okay, then you dig, and then you get something interesting to bring to another team. So I think that's the most used. And then we have the query history for people who learn how to use Honeycomb. I always say, like, look at what other people are looking for. So you'll learn from them and you'll get really good very fast right away. And then they build dashboard, they learn from that as well. They triggers and SLO, of course, to just make sure that everything is respecting what we think we're doing, which is hard otherwise.
And in my case, I'm less often involved in the actual investigations, right? But I think dashboards are a couple of things that I think are very useful on a day-to-day basis is dashboards. So the ability just to have a quick glance as to like the specific service that we have, right? How does it look? Is it healthy? Are there things that are popping up? But then, defining SLOs and triggers is how you get peace of mind a bit, and you don't have to, necessarily have a look at it every day. And you'll get notified if, for example, right, P99 is going above a specific threshold for a specific window of time, things like that. So these are things we use. We're going to be notified by email or Slack. So like these things are extremely useful, but because then you are proactive instead of reactive, right? Like you get notified that something's wrong, you immediately jump in and you look at what's going on instead of waiting for a client to say, hey,
oh God.
I've got an issue here, right? The service is very slow. So yeah, I think things like this immediately come to mind. Like these are things that are helpful in the day-to-day, and I wouldn't go back.
I've always described the SLOs as kind of, it's the butler versus the doorbell. Doorbell goes off, you have to go up and get it. But the butler basically goes, okay, do I need to tell him about this? No.
Yeah.
No, you're just selling credit cards. It's fine. We don't want you. And then just really surfaces the things that are important to you. And I think you were talking about the dashboards there. What we found is that people tend to look at their dashboards less and less and less over time once they get confidence in those SLOs, because they know that they're going to be told if something's going to go a little bit awry. And the reality is, if you look at your dashboards and you're looking for something specific, you should be able to build an SLO around the thing that you're looking for, so that you are told about that thing. Do you feel like you're looking at dashboards less now that you've got stuff like SLOs? Has that had an impact on you?
Yes. Well, I think the easy answer is yes, definitely. In my case, I mean, once you've nailed down, right, the triggers and the SLOs that you care about, that you want to be notified as soon as something goes wrong, I think it buys a lot of confidence. And then, if you jump in the dashboards, because you've got something to investigate.
If I can also, like, on the topic of dashboard, I find it's the fact that when you mentioned that we use it less and less. Usually when you build a dashboard, it's because something broke and you want to keep an eye on it. So it's like a scar of your past. And when you look at someone's dashboard, you saw what broke in the past, which is kind of funny to have a conversation about. But usually when you start monitoring, you usually also start to fix it. So once it's fixed, sometimes the dashboard is not useful anymore. So but you keep it because it broke back in the days. So what I like is Honeycomb is so tools like yours is so flexible that you get to dig into stuff, answer questions. Sometimes you want a dashboard, but it's just like a temporary stuff. Like it's not as involving as building a dashboard for a specific issue using metrics as an example, and then you build this like big thing that are very like, I don't know, they feel less like nimbles, and you kind of want to keep them because you spend so much time to build them. But now, you build a dashboard. Okay, yeah, keep an eye on it until it's not a problem, and then you just stop looking at it. Or if it's really important, you slap an SLO on it, and then you're good for the rest of your life.
Here's a little tip for you, which you weren't obviously expecting to get on one of these. But something that Honeycomb do internally is when we deliver a PR, as part of the PR template, we actually have a link to a query that says, when this goes live, go and look at this query, and it tells you what you should be looking for. Should it be going up? Should it be going down? Should it stay the same? So that when you're shepherding your particular change through production, you know which query you're going to go and do. They don't generally use dashboards. They'll generally say, here's a query that encompasses the thing that I'm trying to do. Which is a really, really good way for other people to go and understand what the PR is, because then when it goes onto UAT or something like that, you can actually go, oh, and this is the query they're looking to look at. What does that tell me? And it helps with understanding, that whole understanding piece.
And you know what I like about that is that it presupposes that you have like added telemetry and the important information that you want to monitor when you deploy stuff. which something is really easy, just like, I think it's fine, it won't break anything, which never happens. Like prod is so much different than when you deploy it, when you code it in your local stuff. So if you deploy it in a way that you're able to monitor it, which you should, and then you added a query that shows me that, there's so much stuff that is good out of this. I love the idea. So
yeah. And the query sharing, right? Like just to double down on this, I think the query sharing, be it in a PR or on Slack, right? It's a small thing, but it's a small thing that is just, I don't know, it's so much more useful, or it's very quick to kind of share, hey, look at what, something's going wrong, look at this query, and then very quickly you have this instead of having to jump through the hoops. And so it's a small thing, but it's a small thing that makes a big difference, actually.
So
thank you for the tip, by the way.
No problem. It's one of my favorite tips to give people, and it blows people's minds when they start doing it and they go, oh, this is so much easier. And it's that side effect that you mentioned, that in order to have the query, they have to have done the work to instrument the thing that they're doing, which is really cool. And on that, so instrumenting your code, one of the things that we tout as one of our big benefits is the time to resolve issues and the time spent actually investigating issues. So do you feel like things like the distributed tracing and the bubble up and the magic, do you feel like that has helped your engineers? Do you feel like they've got more time?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I don't have numbers for you, Martin, but it's
scary enough. Yeah, it's scary enough. You don't have you don't need number. It's like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's not a case of like, is it really making a difference or not? I think it's unequivocal for everybody. Like every single person without exception, I think is gain free time, as recoup time that was previously lost to investigating. Like I think it's night and day. It's pretty clear cut.
Even issues that were not known as issues, which is
correct.
My favorite is like, we found out something that, of course, it was about DNS. It's always about DNS, but we found something about DNS, and we're like, when we fix it, we improve our time so much that it was like, it's worth 6 months of work of like actual optimization in different part, and we just like fix DNS issues that save like improve our response time. It was on nobody's radar ever. It's just like fix it, like, so like, yeah, no.
I've heard people complain to the contrary, that they liked the time and slowness of investigating issues, and now they don't have that. It's like buying somebody a faster computer so they can't go compiling.
Yeah.
We haven't heard that. Fortunately, we have. I think nobody's complaining.
No,
that it's too fast.
No.
Fair enough. Well, that's good to hear. Is it just about investigation time? Is there any other times that you think that it's helped save by having distributed tracing, having bubble up and honeycomb, and all of the other things that we've been talking about today? It's a leading question. I know what I want the answer to be, but I'm hoping you give the right answer.
Well, I think one of the easy answer to give is about onboarding, I think, but Andy, I'll pass the mic to you to talk about this.
Yeah, no, okay, so we hit the right spot.
That was the right answer. Well, I think it's the obvious one, right?
I got scared. Like you were looking for an answer. Like, I hope I have the right one.
Is it a trick question or something?
Yeah, no, onboarding. Before this kind of tool, you needed like to have the new person, like first they'll talk to the expert in their team, which will like explain them their mental model, and if you're lucky enough to have issues with other teams, then you'll have to speak with those experts and then update your mental model, and hopefully like it doesn't clash and it's an actual right mental model. But in the end, like the next PR is probably going to break your whatever you had in mind. Now you just look at the actual data and see what it actually does. I didn't use a lot. I saw that you have a new service map. I didn't use it a lot, but like the planes traces is so good to help you understand what's going on. Whether you're new, you're old, you have like you get it what happened, and that's the real stuff right there. So so much learning.
Do you just put them in front of Honeycomb and go learn? Do you have an onboarding experience for Honeycomb, or?
Not yet, but this is definitely on the map because Honeycomb it's still we onboard team one after the other. But right now we have documentation to explain people what is observability, what these kind of tool can do for them, what's the difference between logging and metrics. So when a new project get onboarded, they get to better understand what's the role of that specific tool for them, what's going to do for them. And usually, as I said earlier, like they'll stop using the other because they'll see it's going to be so much easier for them to use it. The next step is really to we provide documentation on which tool is best for which situation, but the next step is really to give them like, this is Honeycomb, this is how you use it, and this is how it's going to be so much helpful for you, and you can use it to like 11 instead of just like going from 1 to 10 slowly.
I think another thing that is an indirect time saver though, but I think it's a pretty important part in my case and from my perspective is what changed also is, we have applied scientists, right? So you have your engineers and MLOps guys, and like these guys know that stuff, right? They're the experts. Like they use these tools day in, day out. But then you have people work on the models, and at Coveo, most of them are also, writing code in production, and they're also going to be working on the production code. And for these people, or at least for a wide range of them, that stuff is still daunting, right? Like the previous log system and all of that. Like sometimes it's not something they're comfortable in using and all of that, and so they're not going to rely on it that much. Something that I noticed with Honeycomb now is all of a sudden it sounds like it's more fun to them, and so they're spending time in it where before they probably would stay away from that stuff, right? Because it's scary. It's like, oh, I have to go sift through the logs and all that stuff. Like I'll go bother Andy instead. It's an indirect thing, but I think it's very important because it builds their awareness into like again, onboarding a bit like this mental map of the system, right? They're not necessarily the experts of that, but it gives them that awareness that they didn't have before, and I think that's pretty powerful as well.
Oh yeah, the quality of the question we get now, like before it was just like something's not working, was very like not too much detail. Like you kind of feel like, can you fix it, please? Now it's just it's like broken. I think this is broken. Well, but now you get like, I think this is broken. Here's a query I have. Here's what I see like now, and it's so much easier for us to just go like, okay, I see what's happening right there. So because they can do the work, they can like help themselves. So it's great.
Cool. So I'm kind of at the end of all of my questions that I had on my list. So does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, while everybody is thinking about questions, you might have noticed that Bethany just dropped a link in the chat, and we really value everyone's feedback. So just to let you know, like at the end of this, we're going to send out a link to a survey, and if you could complete that would be great, and we will send you one of these lovely t-shirts. Everybody loves t-shirts.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so again, if anybody has any questions, you can drop them in the chat. And then I was just wondering, have you guys had any maybe recent migrations? And by migration, I mean something as big as like, on-prem to cloud, but maybe just transitioning services, or just upgrading to a newer version of a service that maybe Honeycomb may have helped you make that transition a little bit more easy, so you could kind of observe what was going on within the systems as you were making that change.
We're migrating one ML model from one technology to another, and the first step is to instrument the old one properly so we can compare it adequately with the new one. So we haven't done it like with Honeycomb like as a key player within that strategy, but now like it's happening, and Honeycomb is really a key player to make sure that both are having proper performances or similar, that so we can compare them right now. So that's the tool that we're going to use to do that.
And I wanted to say, I think the last time we transitioned the service from one technology to another, again, like we had something like this in 2022 earlier, and I think I was at the beginning or the early days of us, adopting Honeycomb and all that. I remember it was pretty useful. I don't think we had instrumented everything in a way that today we could do, and that we're doing with that new project, but it was still pretty useful. And again, it's having the visibility on that stuff is just a peace of mind it gives you, that you're going to know if something goes wrong, and something you hadn't foreseen, right? So rewriting a model from one language to another, and then obviously you care about the quality of the prediction or the quality of the output, but you obviously also very much care about, well, is there any impact on response time distribution, right? The latency and stuff like that. So having that at your fingertip is very, very useful.
So we do have a question from Rory. So how do you think about sampling? Do you just do it on errors? Have you used Refinery? So for the people who don't know, Refinery is an open source project that Honeycomb have created, which sits in between Honeycomb and your systems to do tail-based sampling. So the idea of sampling at a trace level versus at an individual entry level. How do you think about sampling? Do you sample at all?
Yes, we do sampling. We use a Refinery as well to do tail sampling. And I think it's really interesting. We do so even the idea, like when you look at logs, like we send everything, and it's not true that everything is useful, and we keep stat on it. We keep track of like who's looking at which logs, and we already saw that all logs had human eyes glaring at them, so they were not useful at all. So having this idea of like all the traces that we sent are not exactly all important as they are, but they can be important. The agglomeration of all of them makes sense. On the topic of how do we sample, so we have I think 3 different big strategy, which are like if there are traces that concern a client and we're very interested into it, then if we have traces that are more background job that do not have a client associated to them, then we sample them in a different way. And we also have errors which are sampled less aggressively, so we can really, because they're really important to us, so we want to know like what triggered this error down the road. So this is I hope that answered your question, or feel free to add information so I can help. Yeah.
So I have a story of another client who they passed over the groups from the JWT tokens, and there was a particular group that the VPs and E-staff were in, and their traces never got sampled ever. So it's like a VIP group of people that they could always dig into, because those are the important people to keep happy, which I thought was really interesting as a nice little trace rule in there. Cool. So Hazel has a question about how valuable your team has found the trace view. So beyond obviously using heat map to get into that analysis, and obviously then digging into an individual user interaction, that kind of stuff, and using that trace view. How valuable have you found that?
Just to be clear, the trace view is the one where you see all the trace and the spans?
The waterfall, yeah.
Okay, I'm not, I don't think we ever qualified any window. We just send the link and we don't name them, so it's good to have I mean, as we mentioned, the idea that somebody can understand the full system is already like, that's first of all everything. Understanding also like the order in which they happen. Sometimes people we're more in the process of adding more like business related span, so not just like auto instrumentation, but also like qualifying what's going on. So then people can understand how a search happened at Coveo, and because you have these nice steps and which system are involved into this, and what like the value is immaterial. I don't know to Mathieu.
No, I was going to add to that. Yes, it's pretty valuable, and I can recall from memory, Andy, like there's been a few events where that was instrumental to go to the right team like immediately, because when you look at the trace, you suddenly see that, for example, you have queries that are anomalies in terms of response time, and for us, like normally it's a chain of services that are ending over the request, and so. Knowing that, for example, I need to go to that team because that's clearly where the budget, right, the response budget has been the biggest. So it's things like that. Internally, example for ML models, very naively, for example, something we systematically do is we're gonna divide and we're gonna instrument for like the pre-processing the actual inference, right? Model inference, and then post-processing, because we have stuff happening before and after. So sometimes it's also been useful because you get to know, actually the weird thing is in the pre-processing, actually, because that's taking super long. What's happening there, right? And so these are a few ways that I think it's been useful.
My favorite story about this it's funny. I speak with you and I can remember a good story from every screen because we found something different in every screen. But the one with the spans is the trace view. Is when we we have instrumentation that comes with Spring, so we say like, okay, time this method and everything. But what happened is there was another system for authentication that was called before the method. So when I would look at my everything was like super fast, but then you look at the global answer time, super slow. It was like there's like the time don't match. And then you look in trace view and you see like, oh, by the way, there was a call to the authentication server that was done that took 800 milliseconds. That's a lifetime for a search. It doesn't work out. So then, and it was for a very specific use case, but these kind of you don't get that kind of information from other tools. I didn't get them from metrics, at least, and from log it would have been a pain. So
a common one for that is where things are initialized or cached. And if those are uncached too often, you tend to see, oh, we're getting more and more spikes at particular times, or where are all these spikes coming from? And then you find out that actually every single one of those spikes was when the cache got busted, or like authentication tokens, especially in like Azure, where you're trying to get the MS authentication tokens or IAM roles, getting the IAM tokens, where it gets them from the metadata on a regular basis. If it doesn't cache them, seeing that kind of information in a trace view because you weren't expecting it is really, really interesting, especially when you go, what's that?
Correct. Exactly. So we had the same thing sometimes. Yeah, it's kind of like or cold start, like specific services that you rely on. For example, that happened, I think, very recently. Service we rely on, and then we figured out, slow response time, very anomalous, and then it seems to be a cold start issue for that specific service because it hasn't been queried in a long enough time. Like you can see stuff like that.
So I think we do have time for Hazel's final question before we wrap up, which was, what was the point that you went from let's try this out in our POC as a thing to this is absolutely the thing that we need right now and we are not taking no for an answer? I paraphrase your question there, Hazel, but I hope that's okay.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah, I don't know. So I was following all these talks on observability, and I had some issue wrapping my mind around like, I see the value, but I don't get how we go from like what we're missing from what we have until like, why is it so valuable? So I was having a hard time wrapping my mind because just reading about it sometimes is like, you have to try it. And when I tried it on this coding competition that we have, on the system that we have for the coding competition, then it clicked. I was like, okay, I'm able to see so much more stuff, understand it in such a better way than I can do with logging and metrics. And then because I was working on it like on the side, and then when I was working on the day, and then I had to fix issue with only my old tools. I was like, it doesn't work out. It's not as smooth. It's not as nice. I don't get what I want and I know what I could get from that. Like, you can't come back once you have it. So those were like, we need this. This will save us so much time. Yes,
yeah, and I think as soon as you approached us, right, Andy, and I don't remember I think we're the earliest adopters in the ML group, but in any case, I think it was very obvious, just like the quantity, like the amount of models we have, the amount of stuff we have to keep track on. I think it was really a ha-ha moment for me as soon as like we had like Andy showed us the tool, and he was like, hey, we've been doing POC, we'd like to start deploying this and with some of the machine learning teams and all that. I mean, the response was pretty immediate. Like, I can't remember exactly what was said in that meeting, but I think it was like, hey, I mean, I want this now. I mean, for me, I think it went pretty quickly with the team because for me, it was just, wow, these are all of the things that I wish I could have that I don't right now, right? And that's making our life pretty tough at the moment because the scale at which we have to monitor what we do is just way too much to see clearly. So it was pretty immediate.
To summarize that, would you say it's that ability to dig in? Because it sounds like the things that you're saying there was the ability to see things and that kind of stuff, that ability to see deep into what you were doing versus being able to spend all of that time doing. It seems like that was that thing for you, was being able to see deep.
Yeah, I think so. Andy, I don't know if you want to comment on that, but
yeah, and again, the information it shows, like we had a situation where there was a ping pong over like between teams for like 2 months. I was like, that never again. I'm not reliving through that again. We need something, and that was the thing. So yeah.
Awesome. So that is just about us. So I will throw up the slide again. We click that button there. You'd think I'd use a computer before, wouldn't you? But obviously fill in the survey. Feedback is a gift and we love it. This helps us make things better. So do fill in the survey. Let us know what you liked, what you didn't like. And yeah, thank you so much for coming. Rebecca, do you have anything to wrap up?
No, I'll just like to thank our presenters again today for joining. Yeah, and you can check out Honeycomb.io for more upcoming events and online sessions that we've got in the works.
Thanks for having us.
We'll just plug the fact that we do have a free tier as well. So if any of this has been interesting to you, you can actually go and try it for free without a credit card. So do go and have a look.